I'm delighted to say that here we are in our brand new studios, the Mike Graham Show. You can see behind me, there we are. We've got a wine fridge over there, which is what we're going to be using liberally on a Friday morning. We're going to be doing a bit more wine tasting as we did last week. But I'm delighted to say Sarah Pochin's here.
It's so nice to be here in this wonderful new studio, Mike.
I mean, we've only been going 2.5 weeks, and I'm so pleased that you've been able to come in person, because we've been speaking to a few politicians over the phone and stuff like that, but you're the first proper politician that's actually been and come and spent time with us, so we really appreciate it. Lots of stuff to talk about. You know, you are now one of the Magnificent Seven.
Absolutely.
I mean, last time I saw you, there was only, I think, what, 5 of you?
5.
Now there's 7. Robert Jenrick joined, and then as soon as everybody said, now they've got 6, suddenly you got another, Andrew Rossendale joined in. I saw him the other night, actually. I was at a do for Reem Ibrahim, who was leaving to go off to work in Washington. And, I mean, in some ways, Andrew is a kind of much more important signing, in a way, because I heard Nigel Farage talking about it the other day, that he's been a member of the Tory party since he was 14.
14.
And the Chagos Islands was kind of the thing that made him finally change his mind, because the Chagos Islands now, I hope, is now a problem for the government, and it may well be that the deal doesn't go through.
Well, do you know what, Mike? I mean, everything you said about Andrew is absolutely right. We welcome him in. But yes, Chagos, I think, was the final straw for him with the position of this government. And let's not forget the facts here. You know, why are we giving Chagos away? Why are we paying to give it away? And I've made the point recently, you know, that £35 billion or whatever that we're paying Mauritius, why aren't we putting that into our armed forces?
Yes.
You know, we talk all the time at the moment about the growing hostilities, the growing security threat around the world, and like we've seen for years. And yet here we are giving £35 billion away for no reason whatsoever. Let's keep that money and beef up our security.
Well, this is the thing. We hear it all the time from this government, don't we, that we haven't got any money. We can't afford to increase the number of billions that we put into our national defences, that we can't increase until 2029 the GDP contingent to 3.5% and all of that. And yet they can find money for illegal migrants in hotels. They can find money to give away to the Mauritian government. They can find money for welfare payments that they supposedly don't want to make. And it's extraordinary, isn't it?
I think this finding of 35 billion, this whole Chagos situation, is all about a woke, left-wing agenda for these reparations and whatever else that this lot like to apologise for. You know, we have nothing to apologise for. Yesterday in Parliament, in Westminster Hall, there was a group of Chagosians who were so, so on our side, so pleased that Reform are there standing up for them. And of course, under a Reform government, this deal would not be happening.
You're the only party that is, because the Tories talk a good game.
And look what they did in the Lords, mate.
Yeah, but also look at what they could have done. They could have prevented this from going through, but they didn't. They say that they are on the side of Chagosians, but they were the ones under James Cleverly who started the sell-off, right?
That's right.
That was their idea. And so they are increasingly looking more and more toxic, I think, the Tories, aren't they?
100%. And the Lords they could have voted against it, but even they didn't. When push came to shove at the end with the Tories, they didn't. And I think, going back to Andrew, it was the final nail in the coffin, really. But what is very interesting, isn't it, is the situation with Donald Trump now.
Yes.
He's not finally, but, clearly he's a man with an awful lot in his inbox. But, he came out yesterday very loudly and said, what are the UK doing with this deal? This is a security risk.
Well, he's called it stupid, hasn't he?
He's called it, this is a huge security risk for us all to give this territory away. And effectively, we know the Mauritians are, close, let's put it like that, close to China.
They are.
And so it's extremely unwise from a global security point of view to let this go through. So do you know what? If Keir Starmer ends up U-turning over this, I think it'll bring him down.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been saying this for quite some time. People are making fun of me now because I was like, ever since they got in, actually, from August, after Southport and after those terrible killings of the little girls by Axel Rudy Cabana, whose name I don't really like to mention, I've been staggered every single month that Keir Starmer makes one mistake after another, makes one U-turn after another, makes one gaffe after another, and yet is still there. I mean, I'm amazed that he's there now, and I can't see him surviving not only this Chagos deal if it goes wrong, but also the upcoming elections in May. I know you've been talking about, we played a clip earlier actually of you. In fact, shall we play it again, of Sarah in Parliament yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, asking questions about the elections and why they've still been cancelled. Have a look.
Sarah Pochin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Home Secretary agree that British citizens should be prioritised over asylum seekers in the allocation of publicly funded housing under the £100 million pilot scheme?
The honourable member may have heard me say earlier, we have started the process of hotel exit, which has meant we've reduced the amount of money that we're spending on that. We want all British citizens to be adequately housed. That's why we've released the homelessness strategy that we did at the end of last year. And beyond that, we want to have order and control in our asylum system so that the British people and their proud record of providing shelter can be continued and that people can have confidence in that order and control.
So you asked a question about why the elections have been cancelled, given that they were said to be going ahead, and the minister concerned answers the question by talking about homelessness and how they've actually solved. And you go, sorry, I mean, are you speaking the same language?
Absolutely. So look, let's talk about the elections first. So yesterday, Reform at the High Court got a permission or got agreement from the judge to go forth with our judicial review on, is this government actually allowed legally to deny 3.7 million people a vote and effectively deny democracy? So that is now going to go ahead, which is great news. Again, Reform leading the way and saying, no, this is not acceptable. Some councillors will stay in position for 7 years because of these cancelled elections. And we know, don't we, they're cancelled because they know they're going to lose them.
Of course. Well, I mean, I was interested as well in a story that I think was in the Telegraph on Monday, which said that out of the 28 councils which are not going to hold these elections, thanks to their own decision-making, something like £250 million has been raised in council tax in those areas. So they're not only denying democracy to the people who should have a vote, they're also basically kind of snubbing their nose at people and charging them more money for lesser services, fewer, sort of favours from local government, if you like. And effectively, some of these areas, and I think Nigel's spoken about this, will not have had an election for 7 years. It's extraordinary.
And yesterday, what was very interesting in the chamber was that there were some Labour backbench MPs pointing this out, not happy at all with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is effectively at the moment being run by his backbenchers. He is U-turning left, right and centre. In fact, his only good decisions, in my view, are his U-turning decisions. If only he'd U-turn and walk out of Downing Street. But there we go.
That would be nice.
His backbenchers are now running the show. Some of them yesterday were complaining in the chamber about these cancelled elections and pointing out there is no reason that these councils cannot hold these elections. It's what councils do. I was a councillor for 8 years. I know that it's just what they do. They are perfectly able to hold these elections.
Well, I've been asking ever since the first sort of suggestion was that these, what they call kind of coagulations of local powers were going to be made. I've asked so many people, including Professor Curtis, I should say, up at Strathclyde University, who's the sort of chief expert on voting and the chief cephalogist of Britain. I said, what are they doing here exactly? And even he couldn't explain it. The consolidation of, borough councils into national or sort of, local councils into, county councils. Nobody can really explain why it has to stop actually having people vote for it. Nobody knows.
No, exactly. Look, it's white noise. It's all about them not wanting to make the situation in May worse than we know it's going to be for the government and for the Conservative Party as well. They are both going to do extremely badly if the polls, tell us, what we believe to be true, and certainly what we are finding as campaigners out there in the country, outside of London as well. There is life outside of London. And of course, as we're going around the country, listening to people, our wonderful chairman, David Bull, is always on the road talking to people, and the feedback we're getting, is that so many people are loud and proud reformers.
I saw Nigel the other day, just before he went up to Newark to do that joint rally with Robert Jenrick in Newark, which was brilliantly well received and everywhere reform goes. I get accused of being a reform lovey. I'm not a reform lovey, by the way. I will question reform on every single thing that I think they should be questioned on, and I will do that. However, what he said was interesting. It was at a lunch I was at, and he said, people are accusing reform of fragmenting the right, and saying that, the splits are now emerging. And he actually said something which I thought was really quite perspicacious. He said, actually, we're uniting the right, because what we're doing is we're taking people from the Conservative Party who are on the right side of it.
Yes.
He said, and many people have said this as well, that quite a lot of the rump of MPs in the Conservative Party could well be Lib Dems.
I was just going to say that.
It wouldn't matter, because they're pro...
they're Remainers,
green,
they're wet.
They didn't want to leave the European Union. They're wet. They love net zero. All of those things, And by bringing people like Robert Jenrick into the fold, albeit perhaps slightly clumsily, I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't the best executed.
But I don't think most people care about that.
No.
But I quite like this idea that he's uniting the right and bringing people who are properly conservative, with a small c, into one movement.
And that's what the public wants to see. We'd lost, I think, true conservatism from the Conservative Party. I left 5 years ago in disgust at Brexit and how it hadn't been implemented and so many other things. And I think people like Robert, like Andrew, have hung on. I mean, I think Robert joined at 16 years old. These are lifelong Conservatives. And they've hung on, and now they know that the Conservative Party doesn't represent what true conservatism is anymore. What Mrs Thatcher was all about, hard work. We call it alarm clock Britain, don't we, in reform? And low taxes, growing the economy. That's gone under this Conservative. Let's not forget.
Well, I mean, until the Labour Party got in, we had the highest taxes in the country that we've ever had since the Second World War, under the Tories.
And let's not forget that this Conservative government have absolutely encouraged themselves the environmental agenda and started. I mean, not as bad as Mad Ed Miliband, but the fact is they allowed all of this to start.
Oh, for sure.
And they did nothing to stop the billions going that way. And look, reform. I had a really interesting conversation with a constituent who came to my surgery last week. He was very green, very pro the environment. But by the time we'd had a very sensible conversation about it, do you know what? He went away and he said to me, I've never thought about it that way. Reform are not anti-environment. Reform want to do the best for the environment. Nigel himself is a really interesting expert on wildflowers, on nature. I mean, he's incredibly fascinating to talk to. But the point is, we will not bankrupt the country getting there. It has to be a properly managed approach. And I always say, because in my constituency I have lots of heavy industry.
Yes.
And
you do spend a lot of time up there.
I spend masses of time. Look, 6 votes I won by Mike.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, I see you up there every Friday, every weekend. You're working, talking to the local people, which you don't see a lot of other MPs doing, to be honest.
But all my heavy industry, which I have in Runcorn, very important for me to support because it's jobs. But also, of course, we want to make sure that things are as environmentally friendly as possible. But the fact is, we do have to secure our energy supply. And we have our own energy. But this government will not use our own energy.
But is there not also, there's this sense, isn't there, this government, for me anyway, is literally just a kind of a bunch of corporate sort of Islington-dwelling, North London apparatchiks who've never really been outside of London. They don't get in a car to drive up the motorway. They don't know the state of the roads. They don't try and get a train, which is now to be cancelled, or you have to get a sort of replacement bus service to get to where you want to go. It's almost as if they live inside a bubble, and they expect everybody else to be able to afford to do the things that they can afford to do. I was looking at there's a guy called Oliver Ryan, who's a Labour MP for Burnley. Who decided to have a go at me the other day because he had a go at Nigel Farage. And I thought, I'm just going to have a look and see what you do. And I know that this is always a difficult one for MPs because you've got offices and all that. He was charging £230,000 for his office expenses in Parliament, including, the hiring of various people, members of staff, travel, all the rest of it. He had a miscellaneous section, £3,000. I said, why don't you tell us what the miscellaneous £3,000 is for? And he still hasn't answered. And people were piling in and saying, these are the kind of people who we hate because they're ripping us off and they don't give us value for money.
Do you know what, Mike? When I do things like buy a coffee machine for my office, for my team, I buy it out of my money.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we've got a coffee machine.
Yeah.
We've got a wine
I don't
fridge,
charge
even more
it to the
importantly.
taxpayer.
I don't get to charge it to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just on the phone to the taxman yesterday trying to get a deferral because I've had to give them so much money over the past 2 months that I'm saying, look, I'd like to pay it off in increments if that's all right, because I actually, and they said, why? I said, well, because at the back end of last year, I didn't make very much money.
Yeah.
And they were actually quite helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
But, these are the things that ordinary people have to do. I had to spend 95 minutes on the phone trying to, beg the government to take my money slightly slower than they should otherwise be doing. And it's like, I'm still giving them all my money, and all I know is that they're going to waste it on migrants, they're going to waste it on hotels, they're going to waste it on welfare, they're going to waste it on people who don't bother to get up in the morning and go to work.
I know. And do you know what? We were talking and reminiscing about the by-election yesterday. When we started that by-election, people were not even talking about things like HMOs and yet in Runcorn, when I went up there, they've got a strong voice now for these issues.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. You have to be in the constituency. You have to be living and talking to your constituents to understand real life problems.
Yeah.
So whether
and what people are really struggling with.
And Runcorn is, it's got some lovely, lovely areas to it, but also it is factually one of the most deprived towns in the country.
Yeah.
Do you know, Mike, it has one school only that has a sixth form.
Wow.
There's no further education. So
people have to travel.
Well, and they can't afford to travel. 16-year-olds. We're talking 16-year-olds. And in fact, let's come on to 16-year-olds.
Yes, because you've been very active on the whole banning of children from social media.
But just to finish what I was going to say, the link between lack of further education facilities and deprivation and impossible social mobility is so clear that for the first time, Reform have got their first backbench business debate, which I've got on this very topic.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to shine a light on the fact that we need further education facilities to give our young people opportunities. There's nothing in my constituency.
Yes.
Shocking.
We've actually got a clip of you talking about this the other day. Let's have a look.
I've just asked a question in the House of Commons whilst we were debating a ban on social media for under 16-year-olds. Once again, I didn't receive a straight answer, nothing new there. Banning children from social media is a complicated debate. There are reasonable arguments on both sides, child safety on the one hand, but freedom of information and parental responsibility on the other. I asked the Government Minister, Liz Kendall, a very simple and direct question. Have a listen to my question and the answer I got.
Will the Secretary of State confirm to the House that the Government has no intention to introduce criminal sanctions for parents or guardians of children who access social media through parental accounts?
The Honourable Lady has got this wrong, but what I would say is her party wants to scrap the Online Safety Act. That says everything about reform.
As you've just heard, there was no answer, just the usual party political point scoring, not even an attempt to answer my question. And this is exactly why so many people feel that Parliament is not working as it should. And frankly, why people are fed up with politics and politicians. Ministers are not properly held to account, the Speaker does nothing to demand straight answers, and a 700-year-old system is failing to represent the public effectively. Parliament is badly in need of reform, so I am asking for your help. If you think that was a reasonable question, and if you would like to know the answer, then join me and email Liz Kendall and ask her the same question. Her email address is liz.kendall.mp@parliament.uk. I have shared a short template in the comments which you can use, or you can write in your own words to Liz. But this government should not be allowed to avoid basic questions.
And that is a very good point. And a lot of people say this to me, that, they watch Prime Minister's questions, which will no doubt be happening again later on today. They just don't answer the question, and not only do they not answer it, they sort of answer a completely different question.
We find it all the time with reform. And actually, you know what, it's getting really tiresome now. And it's not serving the British people, which was the point that I'm making there.
Yeah.
So I asked a perfectly reasonable question. are they planning to introduce prosecutions of parents or guardians where children have taken their parents' phone, used their parents' access to social media if they bring this ban in, and this is the response I get.
Childish, isn't
they
it?
purposely start. I think what's happening now is they've got this this instruction that whatever reform get up and ask, it's irrelevant what the question is. They heckle, they shout us down, they make out that we don't know what we're talking about.
They mentioned Russia.
Yeah. Oh, Russia every time.
Please.
If it's not Elon Musk, it's Russia and Putin. Yeah. It's so boring now. And as you saw, you mentioned PMQs. I mean, last week we actually did a little montage of Keir Starmer going reform. Within 10 seconds. He literally mentioned reform and carried on mentioning reform 50 times in 40 minutes. The record's got to change, Starmer. Answer some questions. Clearly, I mean, I guess he won't be there today because he must be in Davos, I suppose.
I'm not sure if he's going, because I think one of the things that we were told yesterday was that Rachel Reeves went, and she's busy telling everybody there that Britain's the most stable country in the world.
Oh, happy days.
And everyone's going,
Our
really?
inflation's gone up today,
270,000 people would disagree. Those are the people who have lost their jobs since the Labour government got in on payroll. So I think the belief is that with Starmer's office, they're sort of saying, well, it'd be a bit embarrassing if I went to Davos and I'm standing outside the US Embassy, or the US House, as I think they call it. Nigel Farage is inside, addressing the American government and having a conversation with Donald Trump. And you're the Prime Minister going, any chance I can get in? So I don't know if he's going to go.
Interesting. Yesterday, I attended Mike Johnson speaking to Parliament.
He's an impressive guy, isn't he?
I was so impressed. He's the, for any viewers that don't know, he is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, a Republican. A different position to our Speaker, Sir Lindsay, in that I think he actually is quite a powerful individual. Obviously, Sir Lindsay's powerful, but in his own way. But you know what I mean? He actually has powers of governmental powers. But what an interesting, fascinating speech. I was so glad I went. I won a ticket in the ballot.
Oh, did you? Because I watched his interview on Sunday with Laura Kuenssberg, and she kept trying to sort of catch him out on all sorts of different things, and he was so clever. And I just thought to myself, isn't it deliciously kind of
a joy
satisfying
to listen to
watch a politician who's actually nimble on his feet, who can handle these kind of woke questions, and completely just pushed her to one side.
He was so strong
and was very, very polite with it.
Strong, articulate, calm, everything that I strive to be. I listened to him and thought,
fine.
No, I listened to him and I thought I would love to be, to be able to deliver like that. What a role model.
But you're also dealing, as he was there, slightly to a lesser extent, with a very hostile media. We talked about this a lot this morning, and we do it all the time. That the media now in this country is so captured and so one-sided that they don't actually report the news anymore. I was watching the coverage. Their coverage of Donald Trump this week has been woeful. They don't understand what he's doing. They continue to complain that he's about to start World War III. They talk about him as if he's the enemy. I actually saw an interview on Sky News yesterday where somebody actually said, do you think we should be sending armed troops to Greenland with a view to having an armed conflict with the Americans? And I'm going, sorry, what?
Do you know, but
have you lost your mind?
But the worrying thing, Mike, is that this is what the public are listening to. And the fact is...
Well, in fewer and fewer numbers, they listen to this show more than they listen to that rubbish.
Thank goodness, because the fact is that Donald Trump is raising a really important issue, the security now of the high north, as we call it. And what we mean by that is Greenland, the Arctic, and that passage through that the Russians and the Chinese, they're circling up there. We've got two hostile superpowers circling up there in the Arctic. That sea is full of their submarines, their naval vessels, and Donald Trump is shining a light on this issue quite rightly in Reform's view. We're not saying that what he's talking about in terms of his tariffs and all this is necessarily the right way to go about it. But the point is, in true Trump fashion, he's going in there with both barrels, but he is highlighting something that the world is not listening to, and that we need to.
I said this at the beginning of the week. I don't think I've mentioned the word Greenland more than twice in my life. And now now everybody's now an expert on Greenland and what should be done. Lots of messages coming in, very positive ones for you, Sarah. Are we going to put these up on the screen, Pooch, or how are we doing it? You are. Sarah is fab, says Laura Jane. That's Sarah just talks common sense, something rare in a politician, says Barry Island. Sarah Pochin, excellent, says Jamie Horse. See, we get absolutely straight to the point messages as we're watching. Labour are cartoonishly embarrassing. They should be forced to answer a direct question. Their obsession with reform is astounding and shows their insecurity and leads to their school bullying behaviour, says Maxine. I wrote to the Speaker, says Yorkie, 12 months ago asking him to direct Starmer and his ministers to actually answer the questions. The Speaker replied, in essence, that he cannot do this.
That's really interesting.
Which is really interesting.
That's the point
because
I made.
A lot of people say that he should be more interventionist and he should say to Keir Starmer, it is Prime Minister's questions, would you mind answering the bloody question?
Yeah. Well, and when I actually had a meeting with Sir Lindsay, who is charming and a lovely, lovely gentleman, but I did say to him about Christmas when Keir Starmer...
He likes a trip to the Caribbean, doesn't he? I know you wanted to get into that.
When Starmer wished the Member of Parliament for Runcorn and Helsby, in other words myself, you know, a white Christmas before Christmas, I said to Sir Lindsay, you know, at what point are you going to intervene? Because, and it comes down to answering these questions. Whatever question we ask, they mention Russia or Putin or whatever. You know, at some point, you know, we're about a democracy in this country.
Sure.
Parliament is there for the people to hear their representatives, their elected representatives.
And you are elected. Let's face it.
You know, by 70,000 people or whatever, however many voted, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Massive amount of people elected me, but they are not. Their representative is not getting her questions answered. At what point will the Speaker now start to intervene on this?
It's a very good question. Now, I've got to ask you about the big story of the week. Forget about Donald Trump and Greenland and Davos and, you know, the world state of war.
What are you going to ask me?
I'm going to ask you about Brooklyn Beckham.
Oh, okay, right.
And the family scenario, because yesterday it was all guns blazing. You know, Brooklyn Beckham puts out a 6-page Instagram tweet, or Instagram publication about how he doesn't want to have anything to do with his family anymore. It's terribly sad, actually, I think. You know, Victoria Beckham and David Beckham, two iconic, I think, British individuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, somebody said to me the other day, why do people hate the Beckhams so much? And I said, well, unfortunately, there are a strand of individuals in this country who hate success.
I was going to say it's jealousy, isn't it?
Jealousy.
It's the green-eyed monster.
And apparently, and you're a mother, and I don't know how old your kids are, probably not old enough to get married yet.
Mid-20s.
Right.
Oh, one's just got married.
One has got married,
One's just got
Did
married.
you dance inappropriately at the wedding? Because I've had a lot of comments from many mothers who are friends of ours and who watch this show, who said, of course you dance inappropriately at your son's wedding, that's what you do. But it's terrible, isn't it, that he's accused his own mother of embarrassing him.
Do you know what? Especially in the job I do now, of course, I'm so aware of anybody that might have a smartphone and take a video. But my son's wedding, he got married in September, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to let my hair down. I'm going to have too much fizz, and I'm going to get on that dance floor. And they had the best band ever. And of course, I did my mum dancing,
of course you did.
And danced with my 2 boys. And I was so happy. It was such a happy day.
Of course.
And I loved every minute of it. And luckily, no
proper...
pictures have made it into the paper.
No, exactly. but that's what you should do. And you know, I find it terribly sad that, as I say, that and I was speaking to my kid's mother, who you met the other day, just the other day, and I said, you know, I don't care what their relationship is, I don't care how it's deteriorated, you do not, under any circumstances, diss your own mother, and certainly not in public.
No, absolutely.
Right?
And like, you know, my boys, we have plenty of robust conversations, especially since I've started this job. But, you know, when it comes to outside, you know, absolutely we stick together.
Yes.
And it's interesting, just like the Reform MPs, you know, whatever...
The Magnificent Seven,
the Magnificent Seven, whatever we say.
That was David Bull's idea, wasn't it? We're not sure about that.
But yeah, this is sad. And actually, going back to the Beckhams, I think there's a lot of jealousy in this country about success. And I think that's one of the problems, actually, with British culture. And going back to the Americans, they celebrate success.
They do.
Whereas we always try and diss, you know, and pick it apart, don't we? And it's such a shame. And what I would... Look, I've never met either of the Beckhams or any of the Beckhams, but as someone that just watches and reads the paper and looks at the pictures like you know, millions of us, they seem a lovely family. That despite all the media scrutiny, they've kept that family together, haven't they?
Of course.
You know, they've kept their marriage together, and that's no mean feat.
No.
And actually, hats off to them. Like I say, I don't know them, but I actually really admire them.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Final question. We're told that there might be a Labour defector coming your way, possibly this week. Lots of people are saying, is it Kate Hoey? Because she's not an MP anymore. People say it's a former MP. Anything you can tell us about that?
Look, I genuinely can't. One of the things that Nigel, as in I don't know,
right.
One of the things that Nigel is brilliant at is keeping things under wraps. And that's why we don't get the leaks that the other parties get.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that. And do you know what? Sometimes it's better not to know, Mike.
Yes.
So it'll be news to me as well. But at the end of the day, we are welcoming in people that want to save this country, save our culture. I actually truly believe we are one election away from losing our British culture and our British heritage and all the things that's so important to people like me and the reason that I am here doing this job. And so anybody that feels as strongly as the Reform MPs do about this, about being proud of this country, proud of our history, are welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to come and join the People's Army, as we call it, because we really do need to, we are mobilising, we need to mobilise, we need to win that election, we need to get Nigel into Downing Street.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be the best thing that had ever happened to this country, and hopefully it will happen. Last question of the day. Piece of the Sun today. Adele apparently has the best-selling female album of all time. It's called 21.
Yes, I love
which
that
is a great album, right?
I love it.
You'll be pleased to know that she sold 56 million copies of that.
Whoa.
And imagine if you took 10 quid out of that, which is probably what she did. I've said, I mean, there's a lot of listing here of the Taylor Swift, Madonna, Celine Dion, Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
Have you got a favourite album, a female album? I've nominated Joni Mitchell's Blue because I'm a bit of a hippie, an old hippie.
But do you know one of my favourite songs ever is the Jodie Mitchell song from Love Actually.
Oh,
when
yeah.
she's in the bedroom and she discovers he's had an affair. Oh, that Jodie Mitchell song's
Okay.
gorgeous. What's it called? It's Love. It's something about love anyway, but it's gorgeous.
I don't know. I hate Love Actually, so I can't remember.
Oh, it's my favourite film,
Is
Mike.
it?
It's the first time we've disagreed.
It is the first
right,
time, yeah.
let's sit down together
All of my
with
family
some
watch
popcorn.
it at Christmas, and
I'm going
go in
to
the garden.
convince you. And let's sit down together and
All
watch
right.
it next Christmas.
Okay.
I'll convince you it's the best film ever.
So what's your favourite female song or female album then? Do you have one?
I do like Adele's 21 album. I like that Something About the Rain, that song, Something About the Rain. Yeah,
okay.
I love it. It's good.
Cool.
But they're all good. I like a bit of Taylor Swift.
A bit of Taylor Swift, I don't mind that.
Did she do Romeo and Juliet? I love that song as well.
Well, that's Dire Straits, the Romeo and Juliet I know.
But
she probably does.
I'm
too old for this kind of conversation.
Okay, we need to spend some time
We do.
Offline, Mike.
We'll do.
Yeah.
Let's line up our Spotify accounts, something like that. Sarah Pochin, brilliant to see you. Thank you so
Lovely
much.
to be here.
Sarah Pochin, ladies and gentlemen, a fantastic guest. The first of many politicians that will be walking through these hallowed halls here in our new studios at the Mike Graham Show. That's it for today. Coming up, we've got an after show promised for you. We're going to speak to Jan Halper-Hayes about Donald Trump and the American influence on Europe and on Davos as it's going to be going on. Reform may have an announcement later on. Nigel Farage is going to be in Davos as well. We have had a fantastic time today. Thank you to all of you for all of your messages, for all of your interactions. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. And don't forget, no matter how many people out there are planks, don't be one yourself.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.